So I know there's a lot of controversy on how you're supposed to wash a truck. I want to start this off by saying you don't need buckets. Buckets can be helpful depending on the wash you're doing. But if your car, if the paint is getting corrected afterwards, you're wasting your time putting 2-3 buckets full of water and dipping your wash mitt in there because you're just putting the dirt back in the bucket. You're either not using a proper pre-rinse, number 2, you don't know how to paint correct, or number 3, you're just doing it for content. So I'm gonna show you guys how I do it without buckets. If your mitt, if your brushes, if anything gets dirty after each wheel clean, we rinse it out with the power washer. All that dirt is out. It's not sitting in your bucket. You're not putting it back into a bucket with dirty water. So that's a little bit controversial between detailers. I know it is. I know some detailers are gonna say, oh, I'm not doing it right, but maybe you just don't know how to paint correct, because if you have a paint which is in the condition that it's in right now, this truck, if you have paint that's in this condition, you're wasting your time using buckets because it's already destroyed, and any type of little bit of hazing or marring that might possibly come from a wash mitt is not going to be enough to make a difference. It's not going to affect your paint correction. It's not going to affect your paint because it's already destroyed, and the scratches that you do make are going to be so minor compared to the ones that are already on. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. First off, we are using GSF Kosher Chemi. This is some of the best wash soap that you can use for your paint. It is pH neutral. It is a phenomenal pre-rinse as well to pull that dirt off, to get as much dirt off as possible before the contact wash. Hence why some detailers think they need to use buckets, so they're not taking their dirty mitts over it. Whatever. You can do it how you want it. I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong. I'm just telling you you're wasting your time if it's getting corrected anyways. So GSF in our foam cannon, and then we are gonna start off by rinsing down the truck with just water. Let that stuff sit a little bit, just to, work on that dirt, and then we're gonna work on the wheels, get the wheels cleaned, and then we're gonna pre-soak with the snow foam, and then we're gonna rinse, and then we're gonna foam it again, and only then will we do a contact wash. And you'll see these wheels are pretty cooked. In between here, you can see it's starting to get red. There's all sorts of brake dust caked in there. And what we're gonna be using is this Meguiar's non-acid wheel and tire cleaner. I know there's a lot of great wheel cleaners out there. A lot of guys might say, oh, that stuff's trash, but it's worked great for me. I get it in a gallon. I get it, it comes pre-diluted in the small bottles, but if you get it in the gallon, it is not diluted yet, so we typically don't dilute it quite as much. It works phenomenal, has worked great for me. And we're just gonna soak this inside of the wheel, outside of the wheel, the tire, and also the wheel well around in here. And you can see, before I'm even done spraying, you can see that stuff working, that brown, red stuff coming off of the tire, off of the wheel. So it does work. If it doesn't work, some wheels are absolutely cooked and we'll have to use a different wheel cleaner. But I try to stick to this just because it's a non-acid. It's not as aggressive. It's not as hard on the wheel. So if this stuff works, we'll stick to this stuff just because of that. And this is the exact part where I show you why I don't use buckets. Like I said, I'm not telling you that you're doing it wrong. I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong if you use buckets, but this is why I don't use buckets. That is because every time you use these brushes and you dip them back into the bucket, you are putting all of this brake dust, all these chemicals, all of that dirt right back into the bucket, and you are dipping your brushes back into those same buckets and getting that dirt back out. So after they get dirty, we use our power washer, we rinse them down, and we get them clean. That way they're good to go. There's no dirty water going into these brushes. There's no dirt that's going to be held in these brushes. It's always clean. And at the same time, you're still using less water than we would have if we would have filled up 2 buckets completely for the wheels and for the wash. Now this wheel is still a bit dirty. There is still a little bit of brake dust around here, and also in the wheel well that we couldn't quite get out on that first pass. So what I'm gonna do, this tire is also a little bit dirty yet. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna use a Mad Acid wheel cleaner to go over this one more time to strip the rest of this and get it as clean as possible. Like I said, we use the non-acid where we can, and then the acid where is needed. Obviously on aluminum wheels or chrome wheels, we do want to be very careful. Aluminum wheels, I will never use that wheel cleaner. Aluminum wheels get sanded and machine polished to get perfect. That Mad Acid is just gonna make it worse. So this Mad Acid is gonna be fine on these. This is just chrome plated. As long as we don't let that sit, as long as we're very careful on how we use that, it'll be perfectly fine. Now you notice I have some gloves on now. Honestly, I recommend gloves with any wheel cleaner you use. Normally I don't use them with that wheel cleaner, but I do try to use it with this wheel cleaner, and I recommend you use it with any wheel cleaner because wheel cleaner is typically very strong. It has a lot of chemicals in it. It's not great for your skin. Obviously, I'm gonna get some over my arms. That's okay, we'll wash it off when we're done, but I do like protecting the hands as much as possible with this stuff. This is a very aggressive wheel cleaner, and you do want to be careful on how you use this stuff. Now, most of this wheel is pretty much clean enough. It is almost perfect, but we're just gonna spray the barrel of this wheel and a little bit in here and also the tire just to get it cleaned up a little bit better. Also want to be careful on how you breathe this stuff in. It is not good to breathe in. If you have a mask, wear a mask. I don't wear a mask, but I definitely recommend you wear a mask. This stuff is extremely strong as far as the smell and those chemicals. That's why you also need to be very careful when you're using it on wheels. Don't put it on the wheel dry. Make sure your wheel is wet before you spray it. And make sure you get to it and you don't let it dry on there. Don't let it sit on there. Agitate it right away, get to it, get it rinsed down, get it off of that wheel as soon as possible. And we just, again, take our power washer, power wash out our brushes, make sure they're nice and clean to keep going as soon as they get dirty. And I know there's going to be people who say, "Oh, you're not doing it right. You're not using buckets. That's just dumb." But I promise you, you're only wasting water. You're only making it harder on yourself. You're wasting your time, wasting water, especially for wheels. If you have your power washer on you, you can wash out those brushes after every spoke, after every half wheel, after every wheel, however often you need to get them clean. But I promise you, they'll always be cleaner with a power washer than they will be if you keep dipping them in the same buckets. And you might say, "Oh, you can get a catcher for the bottom of the bucket." Yes, you can do that and it'll be mostly clean. And the 2-bucket method will still make it mostly clean, but it will never be as clean as running clean power washer water through it. All right, we can see here, hopefully you guys can see here, kind of what that looks like. That is just from a small section of paint. All that tar, iron contamination is still stuck in that clear coat even after a wash. Hence why we need to clay bar it before we polish it. Otherwise, all that stuff that's still stuck in there is, number one, either not gonna come off, or number two, it's gonna stick into your pad and it's just gonna scratch your paint worse, and you won't get that proper polish and that proper cut and polish that you're gonna want when you're correcting this paint. All right, guys, we've got the cut and all the wet sanding wrapped up. As you can see, there's still a lot of holograms in this paint. There's a lot of marks from a rotary. There's a lot of dust and stuff everywhere as well. But I always find it funny in my TikTok lives, there's always guys coming in, oh, you're making it worse. You're leaving holograms. You're leaving rotary marks. Have you ever done this before? Like, I get it. It might not make sense at first, but for paint that's this destroyed, for paint that you want to get perfect, you're going to want it to look like this. If you are using a rotary and you are trying to get paint perfect, this is what your paint should look like after your first cut. Now, there's two completely other stages to perfect this, but this is what you want your first process to look like. Otherwise, you're not going to be getting all those scratches out. You're not going to be getting deep in there, getting those deep scratches out, and I get it. Some people don't want to. Some people are a little scared to do it, and some people, you know, are scared of burning through clear coat, which is completely reasonable, but don't tell me I'm doing it wrong. So anyways, for you guys, next up we have another pass on the rotary with a foam pad, a medium grade foam pad and a fine cutting compound. So it's not as aggressive, but it's still pretty aggressive. It's still gonna leave some holograms, but it will look a little bit shinier than this does now. So our next step is basically to get out all these holograms and get out all the rest of the fine scratches. And then we will see, once we're done with that, you'll see there's still some holograms in there, but that'll be taken care of with the last process with our random orbital and our finishing polish. So we're gonna start on this roof, on the hood, do this side, go all the way around and get this done. So we've wrapped up our second cut. So all the cutting is done, and all that's left is a finishing polish. But as you'll see, I am spraying my windshield. Why am I doing that? Because he DM'd us and asked if we could tint his windshield yet. And I didn't realize this until just now, I guess, when he texted me and he's like, he wants his windshield tinted. So we're gonna do that really quick before we finish up our last step of polishing. It kind of worked out good. Luckily, we weren't completely done with the polishing. Otherwise, I Wouldn't have wanted to tint the windshield because everything would have been perfect. But since we have one more step to our polishing process, it's not that big of a deal. We'll just get it done real quick. Try to be as careful as we can on this paint. Try to not make me any more work as possible. So first thing we're gonna do, scrub it, squeegee it, clean the outside of it. Then we are going to spray it, get our dryer sheet on, get it shrank and cut to size and get this thing thrown on here.
All right, next up we are going to finish these wheels and tires. Now that the paint is polished, ready to ceramic coat, wipe down one last time with ceramic coat. We're gonna finish up these tires real quick. And what I got here is a little pick, which will be picking out all the rocks, everything in the tread. And then we are using the Adams graphene tire dressing with an applicator pad, as well as a brush. Since this tread is a little hard to get into with just a pad, we'll also be using the brush to help us with that. All right, guys, we got the wheels and tires done. The wheels are gonna get coated after we coat the paint with the leftover ceramic we have. We'll do the faces. So the wheels aren't quite done, but we have our exhaust tip here, which we gotta polish up a little bit. We got some Renegade Pro Red and some terry cloth towels, and we're just gonna give this thing a nice hand polish, and it should clean up really nice. It's already pretty clean, but with some hand polish, it'll come out real good. All right, we got this thing wiped down one last time with some isopropyl alcohol. And now what we're doing is we are giving it the final wipe, the ceramic coating, all over the glass, all over the paint, all over vinyl. So let's get this thing chopped out.